Hey everyone, happy September. Can you believe it? September 2nd already. It's crazy. This whole year has gone by so quickly, and here we are, and we're on to the last third of the year. It's amazing. I can't believe we're already in September. And yet here we are in Journey students back in. School started this week for so many of you, whether you decided to go back in person or you're watching school live from your house, or if you're doing Florida virtual or whatever you're doing right now, school's back on for you. And so we're just excited to have you back in Journey students this week. And listen, I got something I got to share on my heart today. Today's topic that I'm going to be talking about is probably the most, I don't even know how to explain it. It's the one thing that seems to be causing so much issue in the world right now. And it seems like everything in the world is an issue right now, right? You have people fighting over COVID-19. You have people fighting for racial injustices. You have people rioting in the streets. There's so many different things going on. But this topic right here, I think, plays a massive part in what's going on. And the truth is that a lot of you have dealt with what I'm going to talk about today. And you'll probably think it's like this super deep and profound topic, but the reality of it is that it's not. It's something really simple, yet really deep. And for us as humans, it's kind of difficult to do the right thing when it comes to this specific topic. So what is it? Well, today we're going to talk about arguing. So you know that there are things that, either you or your parents or your family members, your teachers, whoever it is, there are topics that you guys have decided, you have dug your feet into your position, and that anything that comes against you is complete opposition, and you have to destroy the opposition in order to feel validated. That's what arguing causes us to do, is we take a side, we take a position, and we dig our heels in, and we just fight to the death on it. We make it a hill worth dying on. We do whatever we can. We basically lay down our lives for a belief. And here's the thing. When you go into an argument, it seems like almost everybody is just willing to throw down. And it doesn't matter what the topic is right now. Everybody's willing to argue about something. And it doesn't matter which side you're on. There's a fight to be had. And more importantly, a fight to be won. And so our worlds, everything that we're dealing with, our culture, our society is full of arguments, and the options are endless. And so when there's conflict that goes on, most people tend to go into one of three categories. They go straight to anger, they feel torn, or they couldn't care less. Now, for me personally, I think I struggle with the go straight to anger part. I really have to fight hard to not go straight to anger whenever I hear somebody that has an opposing viewpoint in comparison to mine. If someone's on the opposite side of me, it's really hard for me to not go straight to anger. And when we get really involved in an argument, all we want to do is win. We all have a few tactics that we've practiced when it comes to arguing. So we try yelling, we try the silent treatment, or ghosting, or just straight up trying to fist fight somebody, or talking to the person, or talking about them to somebody else so someone sees how wrong they are and how right we are. And whether in our homes or on social media or on TV, the culture we observe around us, everywhere we look, we are surrounded by big questions with big arguments for or against nearly everything. And so with that in mind, in a time where you can't seem to avoid an argument, there just going to show up at times. And here's the truth. There are some things that are worth fighting for. The question isn't, how do you win the argument? The question is, how do we get better at arguing? And so we're going to look at a passage from the book of James. And the book of James is fascinating because James, who wrote the book, he was the half-brother of Jesus. He was Jesus's little brother. And the interesting thing about James is that he didn't grow up seeing Jesus as the Son of God. You know, he didn't grow up seeing Jesus and hearing about Jesus the way we grew up hearing and seeing and listening about Jesus. What we've learned about Jesus is totally different than James's experience. To James, Jesus wasn't the Son of God. Jesus was his older brother. And to the point where Jesus and his brothers and his family even had issues because Jesus was saying he was the Son of God and his family was having a hard time believing him. But eventually, James came to know Jesus as the Son of God and put his trust in him. And because of that, now we have this amazing book in the New Testament written by the little brother of Jesus. And James has this to say about conflict. Now remember, I said earlier, James had a conflict with Jesus because he didn't trust what he was saying. It wasn't until later that he came to trust Jesus. And James chapter 1, verse 19 says this, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." So I'm going to read that one more time. It says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this." So remember it. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. See, James knows what he's talking about here because he had to actually live it out. See, James began to see something he wasn't seeing before. He was seeing Jesus as his older brother, but then eventually he saw Jesus as the Son of God. And when James changed his mind about Jesus and saw him for who Jesus really was, it put everything else in perspective, including the conflict that he had. So James instructs us, he instructs you to listen first, hear things from the other person's perspective, listen with the intent of listening instead of just trying to change someone's mind. And James said that we should be slow to speak and slow to become angry. And this is important because it doesn't mean that we don't speak at all. In fact, it doesn't even mean that we sit back and just take whatever gets thrown at us. That's the opposite of what James is saying. It means that we don't speak reactively. We stop, we take a deep breath, and we compose our thoughts and emotions before speaking. And we all know what it's like to be quick to talk back and quick to be angry. I remember getting smacked upside my head by my parents because I was quick to talk back all the time. And often, the people we're fighting with will matter far longer than the thing that we're arguing about. Because people matter more than opinions. That's just the truth of it. And so I want you to remember this. You never win an argument if you lose the relationship. If you fight to win in an argument, you will lose the relationship. The goal is not to win the argument. The goal is to win the relationship. So maybe instead of asking, how do I win the argument? The question we should be asking is, how do I win the relationship? So figuring out how to handle arguments or conflict or disagreements has been one of the hardest things about being human. It just is. It always has been. So what are some tips? How can we actually work through this in a way where we're listening to what James has to say and putting it into practice? Well, the first thing is you memorize this verse. It's in the actual verse. James says, my dear brothers and sisters, this is James chapter 1, verse 19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Remember this. Mark this down. Don't forget it. Write it on your hearts. Memorize it. Whatever you have to do, don't lose sight of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. This way, every single time you get into a situation like this, you can do the second thing, which is to stop and pray. Ask God for wisdom. Ask God for guidance. Ask God for the right words. Because the goal isn't for you to be silent. The goal is for you to listen. And by listening, you honor that person, you love them. And then you share what God has laid on your heart. And then the third thing is we want you to empathize. We want you to take a moment, and every single time, we want you to try to see from the other person's perspective. Yes, you might have a friend that's dating a guy that is a total loser and a jerk to her. But man, she needs you to hear her sometimes. Because there's other perspectives and you just need to listen. And you also need to share the truth with her of how bad that relationship is for her. But you got to empathize. And guys, you may have a friend that's going through a really hard time with their family. And you may think that they just need to suck it up. But you need to take time to listen. We need to take time to try to see it from their perspective, because when you do that, it changes things. They're more likely to listen to you. And not saying you're right all the time, because you'll be wrong a lot, and I'm speaking from experience. But God wants to use you even in arguments. It's not about not arguing. James is not saying not to argue. He's just saying, listen, don't speak so quickly, and try not to get angry. So listen, we may not be able to change the way people behave when it comes to conflict, arguing, or fighting. And I'll be honest with you, as we look on the news or on social media or anything going on, it feels like this is never going to end. But see, here's the truth. God is calling you to do more. So while we can't change everybody else and how they deal with conflict and how they argue and the words that they use, we can change how we act in those situations. We can change by how we honor people, no matter what their perspective is, no matter what their thoughts are. It doesn't mean that we have to change what we're thinking and what we believe. That's not what I'm saying. You still believe what you believe, and you, especially when it's a firm truth about Jesus and who he is, you dig deep. But it is a matter of listening. And listen, that's one of the reasons why we think small groups are more important than ever. And that's actually one of the reasons we're going to go back into small groups tonight. We want you to know that you can change the world by you, one person at a time. You just listen, you're slow to speak, and you're slow to anger. So as you head on out, I want you to think about that one relationship or that one person and that relationship with that person that would be better if you were to just practice what James said in chapter 1, verse 19. Then challenge yourself to do just that. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. So I want you to even think about it in this way. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry with who? Who is it? Is it your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your friend at school? Maybe it's not even your friend at school. Maybe it's the kid that you can't stand at your school. Whoever it is, I want you to make the effort. I want you to make the effort. Because Journey students, in a time where every argument is polarizing, where there feels like there can be no middle ground, I want you to help be the bridge. God's called you to more. God's called us to more. So let's do that together. Guys, I love you. We'll see you guys soon. We got Focus coming up pretty soon. Get ready to jump into your small groups. We'll see you in a couple weeks.